Live from Waterford and Dungarvan, this is Waterford at 1 News.
Good afternoon, I'm Eimear McKeown. Today's top stories. Further restrictions are being brought in to slow the spread of COVID-19, which will impact businesses, public transport and prisoners. Gardaí in Waterford say there's been an increase in reports of domestic violence. Boris Johnson has tested positive for coronavirus. And in sport, Waterford's Thomas Barr says he hopes the Olympics will go ahead next summer. Inspections will be carried out at businesses next week, and those not following social distancing rules could be closed down. Yesterday, a tanning salon that was continuing to operate in Waterford City was closed by Gardaí. Further restrictions are being brought in to slow the spread of COVID-19, which will impact public transport and prisoners. Casey O'Riordan reports.
Starting next week, the Health and Safety Authority will start inspecting businesses to make sure they're respecting social distancing guidelines. Health Minister Simon Harris says he will close businesses if necessary.
If it requires me using enforcement procedures here to close down premises that aren't respecting the physical distancing, I certainly won't be found wanting in that regard.
Irish Rail, Bus Air and Dublin Bus and Go Ahead will all scale back services from next week. Senior government official Elizabeth Canavan says busier routes will be better resourced to allow for social distancing.
With some fleet and driver resources being freed up under the new schedules, additional vehicles will be provided for services where there is a greater demand, which will address those physical distancing concerns.
Visiting at all Irish prisons will be suspended from tomorrow, but prisoners will not be completely cut off from their families.
Physical visits will be replaced with electronic visits via internet platforms, video link and video phones.
Casey O'Riordan at Government Buildings.
Taoiseach Simon Coveney says yesterday was Ireland's darkest day so far in the coronavirus emergency after 10 more people died. He's also appealed for other political parties to join Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil in government to deal with what he's called a once-in-a-century crisis. The virus has been described as an invisible enemy that will require a strong and lasting government to fight it. Taoiseach Simon Coveney says other political parties need to join in the process to form that government.
We're being confronted with a once-in-a-century crisis in the aftermath of a Dáil election with no clear winner. But the public aren't interested in excuses, nor should they be. They expect us to do our jobs and to do everything that we can in our power to protect them.
Gardaí in Waterford say there has been an increase in reports of domestic violence. Chief Superintendent of the Waterford Division, Pádraig Dunn, says alcohol is a big factor. He says people affected should not hesitate to contact Gardaí.
Immediately phone 999 or 112. We have a 24-hour service throughout the county, throughout the city. Our job in relation to domestic violence is to keep the victim safe. Where we are called, we have a pro-arrest policy and we will implement that policy stringently. What I have seen that we're getting domestic violence call where alcohol is a big factor in it.
Boris Johnson has tested positive for coronavirus. The British Prime Minister says he's been experiencing mild symptoms of COVID-19. The 55-year-old insists he will continue to lead the government. Mr Johnson says he's now self-isolating in Downing Street.
I've developed mild symptoms of the coronavirus, that's to say a temperature and a persistent cough. And on the advice of the Chief Medical Officer, I've taken a test that has come out positive, so I am working from home, I'm self-isolating, and that's entirely the right thing to do.
A Waterford TD says the people of Ireland have rallied and will not be found wanting. Mary Butler was speaking as the Dáil sat to pass emergency legislation to deal with the outbreak of COVID-19. The Fianna Fáil TD believes all is not bleak.
You only have to look at the frontline healthcare workers up and down the country to find hope. Home care workers and carers, delivering care in the community to our most vulnerable. Our people have rallied and they will not be found wanting. We hear of doctors and nurses coming out of retirement and returning from across the globe to fight this virus. We've seen innovations such as 3D printing companies pivoting to make respirator valves. We've seen many Irish companies change their business model to creating products such as face masks and hand sanitisers.
She again encouraged people to comply with the HSE guidelines.
South Korea have shown how this virus can be slowed. social distancing, testing and contact tracing. The Irish people must play their part in this. We must all follow the HSE guidelines, wash your hands, coughing and sneezing etiquette and social distancing. The value of social distancing will become apparent as the weeks go on if people comply with the guidelines, and we are already seeing the benefit with contact numbers significantly reduced.
A Waterford City-based counselling service is warning that people are being targeted with virtual gambling due to the absence of regular sport. Charities say bookmakers are encouraging people to bet on animated racing and games. CEO of Problem Gambling Ireland, Barry Grant from Waterford, says vulnerable people could be taken advantage of.
Essentially, there'd be a form of a random number generator, so similar to something like an online slot machine or, say, online roulette, something like that, where the race is just 60 to 90 seconds of filling your time with a bit of entertainment. The second that race starts, the random number generator has already designated which horse, say if it's horse racing, is going to be the winner.
Local Link Waterford is offering a collect and deliver service for passengers who require assistance during the crisis. Drivers employed by the Rural Bus Service are available to go to pharmacies and local shops for the elderly, vulnerable and sick. James O'Donoghue, manager of Local Link Waterford, says they're operating a trusted and coordinated support service.
We're trying to reach out particularly to the people that we would carry on our usual door-to-door services. And in fairness to our operators and our drivers, they've been very good in contacting our regular passengers and asking them if they need anything to be brought to them, rather than them having to get on the bus to get to the shop or the pharmacy or whatever it is. So in the first resort, contact the driver or the operator, because mostly that's who they would contact anyway. But failing that, they can ring us here in the office. And our number is 0761 10 2845.
A facility in place at University Hospital Waterford to allow family members to drop off care packages and essentials to patients has been extended to weekends. The drop-off and collection point for laundry and other essentials has been set up at the front hall of the hospital opposite reception. It's open from 12 noon until 2 p.m, 7 days a week. People are asked to have all bags labelled with the patient's name, ward and home address. Meanwhile, the Friends of Ard Keane have made a donation of essentials, including toiletries and pyjamas for patients who arrive at the hospital in an emergency. UHW tweeted their thanks to the volunteers this morning. Today is a Daffodil Day with a difference. Earlier this month, the Irish Cancer Society decided to cancel its biggest annual fundraiser in the interest of health and safety during the COVID-19 pandemic. But rather than lose out on the vital funding needed to support its vital services, the Society has launched a virtual fundraiser. Chief Executive Avril Power says the Society is hoping this new campaign will help make up the funding gap.
Well, we normally raise €4 million on Daffodil Day to fund vital services like night nurses, volunteer drivers and life-saving research. So we're concerned about how we'll make up that gap, but we're really encouraged that so many people have contacted us over the last couple of weeks saying that they'd love to help in other ways. And that's why today we're running a digital Daffodil Day and asking people to donate any amount that they wish on cancer.ie.
WLR Sport.
With Virgin Media Waterford. Virgin Mobile on a 30-day contract. Nothing hidden.
Waterford's Thomas Barr says he hopes the Olympics will go ahead next summer. It's after IOC President Thomas Bach says he hasn't ruled out the Tokyo Games being scheduled for the spring of next year. However, the Olympic 400-metre hurdler would like to see the timetable revert back to the normal summer major championships.
It's actually technically called the Summer Olympics, so I would like to see it in July or August. That's typically when our major championships are every year. So last year, the World Championships were held in October. And it was very strange, and it really kind of threw training, because I found it very difficult to try and peak and try and maintain focus all the way through the year for a very late championships like that. And then when we came back this year, there was a very short lead up to what would have been the Olympics. So it really compressed the season a lot.
Next to Gaelic Games, the Camogie Association has extended its current suspension until the 19th of April at the earliest. Earlier this week, the GAA instructed all clubs to close their facilities until mid-April due to restrictions announced by the government amid the coronavirus pandemic. The Camogie Association's annual congress, which was due to take place in Clonmel next weekend, has deferred and will be rescheduled. Finally, to golf, the US Open is set to become the third golf major to be postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic. The event, originally scheduled to be played between the 18th and 21st of June, will instead take place later in the year and at the same location. The Masters and PGA Championship have already been put on hold, with PGA Tour shut down until mid-June at the earliest. Sports news on WLR is thanks to Virgin Media Waterford.